Have you ever felt that someone was near but no one was there? Not fear, not imagination, just a strange feeling, as if the air still remembered a breath. Edgar Cayce said, "This is not fantasy." He claimed that when a person dies, not everything leaves with the body. A part stays, not in the body, not in the world, but in between. He called it the echo of life, and he said that this echo has three reasons, three forces that hold the soul close to the earth: attachment, fear, and pain. The first people mistake for love, the second hides behind guilt, and the third, so quiet that not every living person can hear it, but it holds stronger than all the rest. Cayce did not simply believe, he saw, not with his eyes, with another kind of sight. When his body slept, his consciousness seemed to travel to the place where the world dissolves into mist, and once he said, "I saw those who do not know, they have died." One day he was invited to an old house on the outskirts. The hostess complained. At night someone walked down the hallway. She heard the rustle of a dress sliding along the floor. But when she opened the door, no one was there. Cayce climbed the stairs. He sat in a chair by the window. The air was cold, but smelled of jasmine. He closed his eyes and whispered, "She hasn't left. She's waiting." The woman turned pale. "Waiting for whom?" "Herself," he said. "She doesn't believe she's dead." He asked the hostess to say aloud, "You are free. There is nothing here left to hold you." The woman repeated, her voice trembling, and at that moment the air became warm. For a second, as if someone exhaled nearby. Then, silence. Silence that doesn't frighten, but heals. Cayce wrote, "The soul doesn't disappear. It seeks response." He claimed that everything we refuse to let go of lives beside us, not spirits, not shadows, memory, searching for peace. He saw its three faces. The first, attachment. It begins with love, but turns into a chain. A woman who had lost her husband came to him. Every night she felt someone sit beside her. She didn't believe in mysticism, she just couldn't sleep. Cayce told her, "He is not beside you. It's you holding him with your fear of being alone." She was silent for a long time, then said, "Thank you. I'll be fine." In the morning, the latch on the window clicked, the curtain stirred, and the house became different. Cayce wrote, "Love spoken without fear returns the souls their road home." He believed that everything in the world is vibration, even thoughts. And if a person dies with resentment or pain, the frequency of the soul does not rise. It remains nearby, in a layer where time does not move. "This is not punishment," wrote Cayce. "It's the inability to forgive." Sometimes he asked people simply to close their eyes and remember the one they could not release. Not an image, he said, a person. Their smell, voice, smile. People began to cry. And then it became quiet. And Cayce whispered, "When pain leaves, the light comes closer." He said that the heaviest souls are not evil. They are lost. Sometimes out of love, sometimes out of fear, sometimes simply because no one told them that everything was already over. And then he would say the phrase that stayed with everyone who ever heard it, "They don't call us, it's we who call them." Pause, silence. And in that silence, someone for the first time understood. Souls don't hold us. We hold them. But Cayce noticed something strange. Sometimes he felt the same, in the living. A gaze without light, a person breathing, speaking, eating. But inside, emptiness. And then he said, "Not everyone who lives is alive, and not everyone who has died is gone." That was the beginning of his greatest discovery. The reason he wrote his readings, about how souls get stuck, not only after death, but also during life. He called the first force the most beautiful and the most treacherous, attachment, the one that begins with love, but over time turns into a chain. Cayce said, "Attachment is love that forgot how to let go." People often came to him who could not release the dead, not because they believed in the afterlife, but because they didn't know how to live without familiar warmth. He saw it in their eyes, a gaze that still had light, but it didn't move. Like a window in an old house where no one has lit a lamp for years. Once a woman came to him. Her husband had died 3 years ago. She said that every night she heard footsteps, the same measured steps. It was as if he was returning from work. "I'm not afraid," she said, "just, he always came home at this time." Cayce listened silently, then said, "He isn't coming back. It's you who opens the door." The woman didn't understand. He explained, "When love becomes habit, it no longer gives life. It takes it." He asked her to show him the house. Everything was exactly as it had been with him. His jacket on the chair, a cracked cup on the table, a clock on the dresser, stopped the day he died. Cayce ran his finger along the glass of the clock. Dust shimmered in the sunlight, as if time itself was still waiting to be set in motion. He said quietly, "He stayed here because you didn't let time move on." The woman began to cry. He handed her a sheet of paper. "Write to him what you didn't have time to say." She wrote for a long time. Tears fell onto the words. When she finished, Cayce said, "Now burn it." The flame trembled like a breath, and when the paper turned to ash, the house became brighter. The woman whispered, "For the first time in 3 years, I heard birds." Cayce wrote, "When the heart makes space, silence stops being emptiness." He explained that attachment isn't only to people, sometimes to a place, to a house, to pain. He knew a man who, after his mother's death, lived among her things as if in a museum. He wouldn't let anyone move the chair, wouldn't open the window, to keep the smell. Cayce asked, "Are you afraid that if you wash the floor, she'll disappear?" The man nodded. Cayce smiled. "She disappears not from cleanliness, but from forgetting. And while you live in the past, her soul lives inside your guilt." A week later, that man cleaned everything, and for the first time in years he slept peacefully. Cayce wrote, "Love that doesn't know farewell becomes a shadow. But as soon as you say thank you, the shadow turns into light." He said that every attachment has a moment, when it can become love again, if a person lets go without fear. Sometimes he made people simply say, "You are free, and I am too." The words sounded simple, but the air afterward changed. It became different, as if the house itself sighed with relief. Cayce believed that in the world there is no death as such. There is only movement, upward or downward. And if the living hold onto the departed, both remain in place. He called it the frozen circle. For the circle to move again, he said, someone must be the first to let go. He often repeated, "The living free the dead with love. The dead return peace to the living." But once something happened that made him reconsider everything. A young woman came to him. She said she hadn't lost anyone, but every night she felt as if someone was breathing nearby, as if someone was waiting. "I don't know who it is," she said, "but I feel warm. I'm not afraid." Cayce closed his eyes. He was silent for a long time, then said, "Sometimes a soul gets stuck not because of love, but because it is being awaited. You're waiting for someone who hasn't been born yet." The woman didn't understand. He smiled. "Then you'll understand later." He later wrote, "Sometimes attachment is not the past but the future. That is afraid to come." He said, "The one who is afraid is not the one who doesn't know what awaits. The one who is afraid is the one who doesn't believe he will be forgiven." Fear, according to Cayce, is the second force. That holds the soul close to the earth. Not loud, not obvious. It lives in everyone who leaves with guilt in their heart. He wrote, "When a person dies with the thought, 'I don't deserve the light,' he turns away from it and remains in his own shadows." Cayce said that such souls do not see the darkness. They become the darkness, and not because they are evil, but because they don't believe they can be anything else. Once a woman came to him. Her husband had died suddenly. A heart attack. No signs, no warnings. But since then she could not enter his study. She said, "The air there stands still, and when she opens the door, something presses on her chest." Cayce came. The room smelled of tobacco and old wood. On the desk, an open notebook. The last line, "We'll talk later." Cayce took the pen, looked at the woman and said quietly, "He's still waiting for that conversation." She burst into tears. "He didn't forgive me?" "No," Cayce answered. "He didn't forgive himself." He described such souls as trapped in mirrors. They look at their former world but see no reflection, only their own fear. "The light waits for everyone," he said, "but those who see themselves as unworthy hide in its shadow." Sometimes during readings Cayce would freeze, as if hearing voices. He said he could feel fear as cold, not physical, but another kind, the kind born of regret. He wrote, "Fear is pain that hasn't realized it can be released." Once in a dream, he saw a man, standing at the edge of something bottomless. The man looked down, and behind him stood the light, but he didn't turn around. "I can't," the man said. "I've done too many bad things." Cayce asked, "Who told you the light punishes?" The man was silent. Then Cayce stepped closer and said, "The light doesn't ask who you were, it just waits for you to turn." The man lifted his eyes, and the darkness vanished. When he awoke, Cayce wrote, "Fear is a door opened not by God, but by man himself." But he saw that fear lived not only after death. He said the living are afraid not of the end, but of change, afraid of losing control, afraid that if they let go, everything will fall apart. "Out of fear we hold on, and by holding on what we lose," he wrote. A soldier came to him after the war. He couldn't sleep. He dreamed of the faces of fallen friends. Sometimes, their voices. "I see them," he said, "and it feels like they're calling me." Cayce replied, "They're not calling. They're waiting for you to stop blaming yourself for surviving." The soldier was silent for a long time. Then he said, "What if I can't?" Cayce answered, "Then they'll stay with you, not as punishment, as a reminder that you must live for them." He believed that fear is the second death, the one that comes when a person stops believing. He can begin again. He said, "Pain can be healed, guilt can be released, but fear must be understood, because it's not an enemy, it just forgot what light is." Cayce often repeated, "Light doesn't chase darkness, it waits until the darkness realizes it's no longer needed." But one day he faced his own fear. During a reading, he suddenly stopped. His voice trembled. He said, "I feel the presence of someone who hasn't left for 100 years. He described a woman in an old dress. She stood nearby but didn't look at him. She only kept repeating, "I don't deserve peace." Cayce walked to the window, placed his hand on the glass and said, "You don't have to be a saint to deserve the light." The wind moved the curtain and the air smelled of lilies. He later wrote, "Every time someone stops being afraid, one shadow becomes light." He said, "Pain is a magnet that pulls the past toward itself." And he added, "It's not an enemy, it just doesn't know that it can leave." Pain, the last of the three forces, the quietest, the most persistent. It doesn't cry out, doesn't call, it waits. Cayce wrote, "If a soul leaves with pain, it returns to where it left it, and there it remains, until someone dares to remember with love, not with loss." A middle-aged woman came to him. She had lost her son in an accident. 10 years had passed, but she still set 2 plates on the table, one for herself, the other for him. She said, "I know he's gone, but if I remove the plate, it feels like betrayal." Cayce was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Betrayal is not forgetting. Betrayal is not allowing yourself to live." He asked her to tell him about her son. She spoke for hours, about his laughter, his books, the little things, and for the first time in 10 years she smiled. Cayce said, That's his life, not the tears, but what remains in you." When she left, he wrote, "When pain turns into gratitude, the soul finds its way home." He believed that pain connects the living and the dead most strongly, because within it there is love, but without release. He wrote, We hold on to pain, thinking we are keeping the memory. But memory doesn't need suffering, it needs light. Sometimes during his readings he would feel how the air in the room became heavier, as if filled with the breath of those who could not leave. He wasn't afraid. He said quietly, "I feel you. But there is no more pain here. You can go." And people later said that after his words, the shadows left. The sound in the house changed, as if the walls had stopped holding someone else's sorrow. Once Cayce wrote, "Pain lives until someone says to it, 'Thank you, you made me alive.'" He believed that any pain is a door, not to the past, but to return, not to those who have gone, but to oneself. He often said, "Death is not the opposite of life, it's its pause, and pain is the music that plays in that pause until someone dares to play on." One night in a dream he found himself on a shore. The sea was calm and the waves rolled like breathing. Along the water walked people. Each held something invisible in their hands. Cayce realized it was their pain. And suddenly one of them stopped, raised his hands to the sky, and let go. What he held turned into light, and that light rose above the sea. One by one the others began to release as well, and the sea became bright. When he awoke, Cayce wrote, "When one person releases pain, thousands of souls see the road home." He believed that pain does not disappear. It simply changes form. It becomes warmth, if not hidden in the dark. He said, "You don't need to forget. You need to allow yourself to remember without fear." In one of his last readings, he said, "I've realized that all three forces, attachment, fear, and pain, don't live in the dead, but in us. And if we free them within ourselves, we free those who wait for us beyond the edge." He smiled, closed his eyes, and added, "When love becomes stronger than fear, souls find their way home." Since then, those who had been near Cayce said that after his words, the air changed. It became cleaner, like after rain. As if someone unseen had finally exhaled, he wrote his final words in his journal. "Pain is not an enemy. It is a reminder that you are still capable of feeling. And if you can feel, then you are alive." And maybe that's why, when we suddenly feel warmth for no reason, or a silence that brings peace, it's not the wind. It's someone saying to us, "I'm home." The end.